Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is GGFan. Earlier this morning, I published the video about why Ojama got banned from Smirgon. This will probably be my last video about the inner machinations of the online Pokemon world. I just find this to be a fruitless endeavor. As you know, Smirgon at this point is simply too big and too ingrained to the point where people will undermine, if not completely jettison, any sort of opposing viewpoint. I'm not complaining about this. That's the way it is. That's where we are now. My main goal was to get some things off my mind, say my piece before I finally ride off into the proverbial sunset. Now, the last thing I'd like to talk about is Lavos. But before that, there are some loose ends I'd like to tie up regarding the Ojama situation. Something I neglected to talk about that I certainly should have. If you look here, you'll see this link. Now, recently there was a lot of controversy because of some horrendous remarks Chaos made about transgender people many years ago. Someone sent me this link. I don't know if it still works, but in this thread, Chaos made several disturbing remarks against transgender people. However, instead of taking accountability, owning up to them, and apologizing, he swiftly deleted everything, covered up all his tracks. So, all of the messages were deleted. Well, all of them except for one. One message was saved. So if you look here, he says, "Sure, that's nothing surprising. However, if you cut off your penis, you are still a boy. Just a mutilated one. All the artificial estrogen in the world isn't going to change that." So, Chaos made this disturbing remark against trans people in 2007. At this point, he's a big boy. I think he's an adult. Nonetheless, this was almost 20 years ago. I'm not saying we should demonize him, judge him for this. But what about Ojama? Ojama was banned for something he said years prior. But ultimately, Chaos is the owner of Smirgon. He can say and do whatever he wants. Obviously, we all know why Chaos did not take accountability and apologize, instead preferring to delete everything as if it never happened. Today, many of the most prominent people who build Smirgon and keep the servers running, who spend all day on the forums, the discords, etc., identify as LGBT. So they need to feel validated. Chaos makes profit off their work. He makes big bank. So we can't have anything unsavory said about them. So he covered up his tracks. This one message remained. And again, I'm not saying that we should demonize Chaos now, but I'm also saying that we shouldn't demonize Ojama for something he said, an innocuous remark he made years ago. I mean, honestly, what Ojama said warranted a minor infraction at best. But anyways, that's enough of Ojama and Chaos. Let's go back to Lavos. So Lavos, unlike Ojama, is in the Noteworthy banned users list. A list which I am not on. I've been banned from Smirgon for over 20 years. In fact, I may be the very first person Smirgon banned. Yet, I am not on this list. I think many people were surprised about that, myself included. Lavos is on it, however. So Lavos is in the same company as pedophiles and doxxers and outright evil people. What did he do to earn this dubious distinction? Well, according to Smirgon, he's on this list for excessive racism and repeated harassment. Now, it was a little bit difficult to figure out what to talk about because Lavos and I were never friends. In fact, we were never acquaintances. Our interactions were always brief. I don't really want to get into it. Doesn't really matter. I've only had very brief conversations. So let's focus on why Lavos got banned. Now, Lavos, if you're not aware, Lavos is considered by many to be the greatest player in Smirgon history. His sundry exploits are well known amongst those in the Smirgon world. There's no need to list his accolades here. So I want to focus here, excessive racism. What is this alluding to? Well, Lavos called Elodin the N-word. If you don't know who Elodin is, or you forgot who he was, this is Elodin, whom I talked about in my last video. Elodin claimed that Ojama and Lavos could have gone to jail for what they said, the horrible things they did, calling somebody the N-word on the internet, calling somebody the F-word on the internet, as probably most people in this thread did and do. So this is but one of many stupid things Elodin has said about Lavos. What inspired Lavos? What drove him to call Elodin this dehumanizing word? Well, Lavos and Elodin were friends. They were good friends, actually. And this friendship dissolved due to something utterly cowardly that Elodin did. So, Lavos once ghosted Elodin in the GSC Cup. If you don't know what ghosting means, Lavos told Elodin what to do. Elodin got the win. Lavos helped his friend. Life moved on. Later on, however, Elodin and Lavos were in the finals of the World Cup. I believe Lavos was a member of Team US West, while Elodin was obviously a part of Team Brazil. And Elodin did something that has made him utterly despised by many people. Today, Elodin ratted out Lavos. He told staff about what Lavos has done. So as a result, both of them were tour banned for 1 year, which meant that Lavos could not play the GSC game. Elodin destroyed a friendship. Elodin sabotaged the opposing team to give his team a better chance of winning. This to me, honestly, makes Elodin one of the biggest cowards. Not one of the biggest. He is the biggest coward, the biggest snake, the biggest two-faced lying sack of garbage in the history of competitive Pokemon for what he did. By far. And you know what? I'm not just saying this because of what he did to Lavos. I barely knew Lavos, as I said before. I have experience with Elodin as well. I, too, played in the World Cup. I played for Team Asia. And, Elodin and the rest of his degenerate friends made a sincere effort to make my experience in the World Cup as miserable as possible. They constantly insulted our team. They berated us. They tried to stir shit. They said something along the lines of how we were responsible for one of his players not being able to play the set. It was crazy. We had no idea what he was on about. He was just doing this to be an asshole, a complete jerk. He is the antithesis of sportsmanship. He is the antithesis of friendship. Elodin, you are a two-faced, no-good, lying sack of garbage. And the aftermath is that Lavos got permanently banned. Elodin is renowned and revered by many of the monkeys in the Smirgon world. I don't really care what the sheep say. They can baa all they want. Smirgon doesn't mean a damn thing to me. Elodin, you're a coward. You're a snake. And for what you did to me and the team I played for that year in the World Cup, for what an asshole you were for no reason at all. It was the first round. What on earth did we do? What did I ever do to you? You're a coward. You're a snake. Fuck you, Elodin. That's coming from me. So Lavos is gone, and as a result, Smirgon lost a shit ton of credibility as a competitive entity, and over the years, others would be banned, others would leave because they were simply fed up, and now we have Allude as the beacon of morality after all the horrible things he said and done, after being the antithesis of sportsmanship, after proudly being the biggest coward in the history of competitive Pokemon. What he did should have resulted in a permanent tour ban. It was very obvious why he did what he did. But maybe it's because, some people just never liked Lavos and they made that decision to spite him. They could have issued the tour ban after the World Cup. Maybe it was deliberate. I don't know. Well, given what I now know about the inner machinations of Smirgon, I've learned so much. So many people have reached out to me. They've told me their stories. They've given me screenshots and leaks and whatnot. I have learned so much over the last week about how disturbing and repulsive Smirgon really is. This incident really highlights it. So Lavos got really mad and called him the N-word. So this is why you see excessive racism in this section dedicated to Lavos. I mean, repeated harassment now. I will expound on my experiences with Lavos a bit here. We were teammates in the Pokemon Online Championship League. Think of this as a discount SPL. Nonetheless, we both took it seriously. We both wanted to win. During this tour, Lavos was subject to so much harassment. They constantly magnetized his games. They would scrutinize him for misplaying. Oh, you lost to me. Haha, you suck. He'd have to deal with that whenever he dropped the game. If there's one person who I can say was almost as much of a lightning rod as me, if not more so, it was Lavos. A lot of people just hated him. If he dished out harassment, he dealt with just as much. And you have to remember, he was brought up in a toxic, tumultuous environment. Smirgon these days presents, it hides under this veneer of, wholesomeness, friendliness. Oh, welcome to Smirgon. Everybody's welcome here. No, it's bullshit. Smirgon back then was very toxic. People were doxing each other. Tours were canceled. Players were getting sabotaged. Mazer destroyed SPL. Even me, ABR tried to sabotage me during SPL when he was a mod or a tour host. Tried to get me DQ during my game. GGFan, I'm gonna DQ you. Fuck you. I bet your balls hurt. But because ABR is a favorite, he was in a position of power. We bat a blind eye to that. So when I say repeated harassment, you know what? If you ban Lavos for harassing people, you should ban hundreds of others. Because they were just as bad, if not worse. And again, it was partially a product of the times. Now, to me, honestly, the Pokemon world is just as toxic as it was before. It's toxic in different ways. People now are very two-faced, very insidious. But anyways, there you have it. He was banned for excessive racism, repeated harassment. Now, there is one more reason he was banned. This interview was lost to time. There is an audio interview that Callus did with Lavos that can still be found in the YouTube galaxy, but he also did a written interview which did not survive the exigencies of time. In this interview, Lavos made offensive remarks. That's how we know he called Allude the N-word. He also made a very offensive remark against trans people by referring to the quote LGBT jerk as the tranny brigade quote. Now this remark was made because at this time many of Smirgon's most powerful people they identified as LGBT. And to be honest, this is not to say, I don't say this because I dislike them. I don't care. We're in the 21st century. It's 2025. Be who you want to be. Do what you want to do. This is a short life. Enjoy it. I say this because at the time, a lot of them were doing very malicious things. A lot of them were involved in corruption. They were very abrasive at times. Even to this day, you see it. Alice, for example, was recently banned for, a lifetime of being abrasive and saying horrible things. But back then it was the same thing. They were hurtful. They were abrasive. They were sabotaging players. They were indulging in corruption. I'm not saying this justifies what Lavos said, but I believe the main reason he was permanently banished was because he called them the quote-unquote tranny brigade. And as you know, today, obviously, there is a major LGBT contingency in Smirgon. They built the site. They are the ones spending most of their time on it. They are the ones making Chaos bank. So in return, cannot say a single derogatory thing about them. Again, I'm not saying he should have, but it is what it is, right? So Lavos said that. He called Deloden the N-word. He said, quote-unquote, tranny brigade, and he was permanently banned. And he will be banned for life. This ban will not be lifted anytime soon. I don't know, maybe if he were to appeal a decade from now, but I really doubt he will be interested in returning to what he perceives to be an insular echo chamber, as he put it. So there you go. That is the story of Lavos. Well, it wasn't much of a story. He's impossible to reach. I wasn't able to track him down, but I hope I was able to provide some insight as to why he got banned, as well as the deeply ingrained political structure of Smirgon. And this will probably be my last video in my exposing the Pokemon World series. I'll be honest, I lost many subscribers. That's okay. I obviously, for me, YouTube is a fun little thing I do. I've never done it for fame or money. It's great when people give me positive feedback, they leave positive comments, but I think most of the people who unsubscribe, they may be Mother fans, and I would like to say something to my Mother fans. I mostly produce Mother content, Mother, Earthbound. This is something I'd like to get back to after I'm done with this. So if you're disappointed that I haven't been uploading Mother videos, don't worry. I'm almost done with this. Now, if you're one of the few who enjoyed these videos, I sincerely appreciate your support. And again, I'm not angry. I'm not, this is not because I wanted revenge. Oh, you've been banned for 20 years, you want revenge. No, these are just things that I felt like I should say before I just about completely abandon the Pokemon world. I'll be involved in a very, very limited capacity. I have a small little Discord. I'll chat with people. I'll play a few games on ladder. I'll probably never play in tours again, given everything I know, given everything I've learned about, the kinds of people, the kinds of sordid individuals are in charge. It's kind of sickening, really, but I think that's it. So this was the story of Lavos. Well, this was the story of why Lavos got banned. I hope you found this video insightful or at least somewhat entertaining. Have a great day.